غير له.
We're innocent!
can expect in Assassin's Creed Origins in 2018, and I also wanted to take a quick look at the content that has already been added to the game, and this especially for people that just got the game for Christmas or just picked it up during the sale that is going on right now. So I thought, let's run down everything in one video, including when I think the big expansions and other stuff will be released. I get these questions a lot, so I thought, why not cover them in one video? If you watched all my videos since the launch of the game, then you probably know most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, but still I think it's nice to pack it all in one thing, and I like doing it as well, so why not? So if you enjoyed that, then a like of course would be super appreciated, and let's go! Ever since Ubisoft released the post-launch content trailer for Assassin's Creed Origins, we knew that we could be playing this game for months after release, thanks to the new stuff that would make its way to the game. Ubisoft even calls it the biggest post-launch content plan for any Assassin's Creed game, and in the 2 months since launch, we already experienced that. Especially in December, we had new stuff every week, and I totally see them doing that in the upcoming months as well. Also worth noting is that one big game from Ubisoft has been pushed to the next fiscal year. And the fiscal year ends on the final day of March each year, and that is when the companies look back at the previous year and share how they have done. With them moving the Crew 2 to the next fiscal year to polish it up, and Far Cry 5 having 1 month less on the market, it is delayed from February to the end of March, I expect them to push Assassin's Creed Origins even more. And one feature that was first slated to release in early 2018 now got released in December instead, so that kinda proves my point. I will touch on that later on in this video, but first, let's take a look at 2018, because there are totally some awesome things coming our way. While I expect a big blog post going in depth on everything we can expect in January really soon, just like Ubisoft did for the previous months, I'll of course cover that. We already know though that the first DLC expansion will hit, called the Hidden Ones. This expansion is part of the season pass, but will probably also be available separately if you would prefer that. While the footage you see here is the only footage we got, we do know that it will be set after the main game, a few years to be exact, and will have us fight Romans that are at war with the rebels. I think it will involve a lot of fighting alongside the rebels, like we saw near the end of the main game as well, and in the high level areas. We already got a look at the achievements of the DLC, since they were added to Steam a little bit too early. I went in depth on them in another video, but in short it looks like this expansion will include simply more of Origins with new targets, enemy settlements, and a new region to explore, and I'm just all for that. We will probably also be able to upgrade our gear even more with this DLC, because thanks to the latest patch we already saw the new looks for the bracers and the quiver and stuff like that. The DLC will also raise the level cap, I think to level 50, but no word on that yet. So when do I think this DLC will release? Well, we only know January right now, but my bet would be on the 23rd or the 30th. Simply because it will release on a Tuesday, I think, like the other Assassin's Creed Origins content and the regular DLC does as well. And if it would be early January, then we probably already heard way more about it, right? I will of course be all over the DLC, so when we know more and when it's out, I got all the content right here on this channel. A free feature that is coming in early 2018 is the Discovery Tour, and that's a really unique feature where we can explore Egypt but without combat, but with the intention to learn more about the world and the time the game is set in. Interesting is that we can play as Cleopatra, Aya, Caesar, and way more characters, as Ubisoft says that the list is long. What you will be able to do is go to the big cities and other landmarks in the game as well, and simply learn more about them. There should be guided tours as well, all based on info from real-world museums. I think Ubisoft hopes to spark an interest in the game by more people than the regular gamer. Maybe history lessons in school could use this discovery mode. It has a ton of potential, but I don't know if I will use it a lot, because I'm like more interested in combat weapons and the other regular Assassin's Creed Origins content, but we will have to wait and see what this feature brings. Maybe if they give you some rewards for doing stuff in the discovery mode that you can then use in the main game, that would be cool. Then I would totally like toy around in the discovery tour, but we will have to wait and see. One of the most requested features is a New Game Plus mode, where we can restart the game with the gear we already have, so do the first cutscenes while you're wearing your Anubis outfit, for example. Ubisoft already said to be looking into this, as noted in the Q&A post they did, And why would you give it such prominent attention if you do not plan to do anything about it, right? So I expect this one to come in the game, and I think February for this one makes a ton of sense. So just between the two big expansions we have in January, and we also got one in March. The March expansion that is part of the season pass is the Curse of the Varos DLC that will once again increase the level cap probably to level 60 and include new abilities that I'm all for, of course. Hopefully some new melee fighting skills or maybe more ways to use our bow. So apart from the fact that it includes even more ways to upgrade our character, this one looks more interesting as well and looks different from the Hidden Ones DLC that more looks like a traditional expansion. In this March expansion we will be going to a quote-unquote huge new area, fight Pharaohs, Scorpions, Anubis warriors. I mean, look at this short footage of this big guy with this mace. I want to fight this guy, and we will also get more godlike weapons, because thanks to Dutch Giant we gotta look at some names of the upcoming weapons from this DLC, and yes indeed they all have a connection to a pharaoh or a god. We will go into a new mystical realm, fight enemies we've never seen before, and hopefully get more awesome looking outfits like the Anubis one. I really think the potential for outfits in this expansion is just enormous. I can't wait to see what they come up with. So there are 4 Tuesdays in March that this can hit on, and I would again say that we are looking at the 2 final days of March, so March 20th or March 27th. This is just me speculating, of course. I really can't wait for this expansion. But there will probably be more, like the things we already saw, like the nightmare difficulty and the enemy scaling that was based on the feedback from the community. Something that was first not in the cards was later added to the game for free as well. So I totally expect more quality of life changes in the coming months as well. And then we also have the stuff that has already been released but will return in 2018 occasionally. If you just started the game, stuff like the Trials of the Gods is maybe something you haven't touched on yet, where you fight big level 40 bosses and get awesome gear like the Anubis outfit. I really think that every 2 weeks we will have a Trials of the Gods event, so if you missed it you will still be able to fight the gods. But even if you already killed them, there will be community challenges to take part in, to earn some nice golden Anubis gear set items, including an alternative Anubis outfit and more. So like I said, for everyone that already killed all the gods multiple times, we will still have a reason to care for when Anubis, Sobek and Segment will return, because if we kill one, we will get one of the golden Anubis items if the community challenges were successful. But come on, all the platforms managed to smash the Wii goal within 24 hours, so I think it will totally happen in the next challenges as well. Some people already got the items through a bug, so yeah, no reason to care about the Trials of the Gods anymore in the distant future at least. I still hope we get some Sobek love as well, like an exclusive Sobek set, but yeah, hopefully they change the vibes up as well, because if I can beat these level 40 bosses on level 4, then they are not the hardest challenges we signed up for. So yeah, the Trials of the Gods started in November, but will continue throughout the year with at least a rewards for everyone till February 2018. But if you just picked up Assassin's Creed Origins, you will have a ton of awesome stuff to collect when you're ready to take on these bosses. So yeah, 2018 looks awesome with free content and the big expansions coming our way, but we will probably also see some new equipment sets that Ubisoft has been adding to the Helix store that will be available for free to the Hacker Chest as well. In January, the 4 previously released packs will be added to these loot boxes that are available for in-game currency only: the Nightmare Pack, the Versatilization Pack, the Gladiator Pack and the newly released Wacky Pack. I made a video on all these packs so you can check them out for an in-depth look, but I totally expect Ubisoft to add more of these packs in the coming months as well. They release them every other week, so we will have to wait and see for the new ones in 2018, but I totally expect that they will be coming. So yeah, what we got in 2018 right now is 2 big expansions, the Discovery Tour, probably a new Game Plus mode, new equipment packs that you can buy or get for free through the Hacker Chest, and probably more if we have to believe Ashraf Ismail, the game director, in the post-launch content video.
There is a lot more to say and a lot more to come, so stay tuned.
Because that is the question right now that I will totally ask when I get the chance to interview one of the devs. Can we expect more support for the game beyond March 2018? Looking at other Ubisoft games, I would totally say yes. But this is the first time they are going in aggressive with an Assassin's Creed game, so it will be interesting to see And of course, it also depends on if there is a new Assassin's Creed game coming in 2018 as well. My money would be on a new Assassin's Creed game in 2019 and still support for Origins in 2018 beyond March. Like maybe we will see multiplayer being added back to the game, but then co-op, like Square Enix did with Final Fantasy 15, a totally different multiplayer campaign. That would be awesome. I would totally be down for that. But yeah, right now a lot of questions. They do have a live content director on this game. Will he simply move on to another project after March 2018? I don't think so. So I think there's more to it. But right now we still have a lot of questions. But we do know that early 2018 will be really crowded. And if you just picked up the game, then you still have a lot of content to go through. So I want to give you a quick rundown as well of what they've added since launch. I already touched on some things, but I did not talk about the Final Fantasy 15 quest that was added in December, where you get a sword, shield and a new mount. You can easily find the quests on the map because the green icon will show even if you haven't discovered the area yet, and you can really do it earlier than level 23 as the quest suggests, because there's no fighting involved and it will give you some nice weapons early on, so totally try it. Another quest that was added in December was for the new Horde mode. Here comes a challenger is the quest, and it's for the end game players because the Horde mode is there as well. And what is interesting is that the Horde mode was supposed to hit in early 2018 but got pushed to December. So like I said, I really think they're pushing Assassin's Creed Origins more, and this kind of shows you that. So the Horde mode as it is right now at the time of this recording is really fun until you hit wave 16, because the enemies simply get too high level so you can't do any damage and they almost one-shot you. I'm working on a video that goes in depth on the Horde mode, so totally expect that soon on the channel, but right now there's really no incentive to do it. It's, by the way, Green Arena, and it should be accessible on patch 1.10. Speaking of that big December title update, it also included a new nightmare difficulty where enemies will hit harder and can take more damage, and also the enemy scaling option where all the lower level enemies will be matched to your level, so you always have a challenge even though you are in a low level area. So this is an awesome feature on level 40, but I can imagine when you still need to get to the max level doing older side quests, it's also more fun if the enemies are a challenge. So it's really a cool, awesome free feature overall. They also added an easier way to give Bayek hair or a beard, so if you want that you can go to the gear menu and to the outfit icon and see it next to that. But yeah, there is a ton of stuff in this patch, and of course I did a full rundown when they released in November, and of course the December patch I just talked about. So totally check that video out if you want a full rundown of all the changes. Also worth noting is that they added the new legacy outfit from Edward Kenway from Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag to the Ubisoft Club store. So totally link your Ubisoft Club with the game to get some awesome extras. And then I totally missed some things that were also added, but I think that I touched on the most important things that you need to know when you start this game right now, so when you just got the game. Of course 2018 looks really cool. What are you most excited about? Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything Assassin's Creed Origins when this content drops. I really can't wait, and I will make a ton of content about it like you expect from me. Check out my video on the Wacky Pack that was just released. Like this video to support the channel. Thanks for watching.
Hey lads, welcome to another video, and get that monstrosity off of my screen. I'm sorry, when I see that thing, my mind just goes to shit. Alright, so it's a new year. Happy New Year, kids. How are you finding this year? Is it doing you well today? Let me know. Last year we got a new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Origins. So this year, 2018, it is time to update our ranking the Assassin's Creed games video so that it includes Origins. A lot of people have been asking me on streams and things to answer the question, where do I rank Origins, etc, as if I could come up with the entire list on the spot. But now I think I've got my list together just in time for the new year. Obviously, before we get into the list, please do bear in mind that this is my opinion. You are entitled to your own. Please don't kill me. I don't really want to wind up like the unicorn. But now all that nonsense is out of the way, let's actually get into the list, starting off with our number 10 spot, which is Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Now I get that Assassin's Creed Syndicate was a decent game on its own, but for an Assassin's Creed game it didn't come across with the correct tone. Instead, it came across as an utter piss take, and that's not exactly a good thing for someone who's been a fan since the beginning. The game did a lot of things wrong in my books. One of them was try to be very self-aware, and to be honest, the result kind of speaks for itself.
I'm sure you can put this to better use than I can.
Oh, what's this, Greenie?
Assassin Christmas.
Yeah. Stop. Beyond that, by the time Syndicate got around, the formula that made Assassin's Creed games at the time was incredibly tired, and Syndicate got the back end of that, so as a result it wound up right at the very top in the worst spot on the list. If you have a problem with that, please don't kill me. You know what? Please hold on to that thought, because I know a lot of people are going to get angry at this next one. So you might have guessed it, next we have got Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 3 definitely had its fair share of redeeming qualities, such as the opening 3 sequences with Kenway and the good modern day storyline, which could have been better, but it was fine as is. But it was brought down by the many issues it had. Most notably, the main protagonist Connor failed to hit the mark for me because he had the personality of a lobotomized frog. Or for that matter, anything that's lobotomized. Connor's story, in my opinion, was very poorly done, and as a result I couldn't find it in me to enjoy the main focus of the game. Beyond this, the open world was relatively empty, with hardly anything to do besides from collect the odd thing here and there and do the odd shallow side mission. And on top of all of this, the ugly blue HUD made the game seem unfinished. The only area that seemed anywhere near the quality of how the entire world should have been was the homestead, which was the hub area if you will. Outside of what was scripted, there really wasn't much happening there. There were of course the homestead missions, which make this area seem a lot more complete than the rest of them, but all in all Assassin's Creed 3 really didn't seem complete. Obviously Assassin's Creed 3 made for good testing for Black Flag, which came directly after it, but to me it wasn't really anything special by itself. However, I do realise that a lot of people probably watching this video right now really love this game, and from some perspectives I can understand why, for sure. And as always, I respect any and all opinions, but to me this game just didn't hit the mark. Not as good as William did. Oh, good joke. Good joke. Right, let's move on. So next up we have got Assassin's Creed Unity. I have no idea where to begin with this one, truly. I guess I could start off by saying that once I get through about 100 essays of ranting, there are some redeeming factors. Decent customization, fun side content, the fun feeling of playing online with friends, and then there's... yeah. On launch and even today, Unity is broken to no end. It's a proper buggy mess, though in fairness it was much worse on launch than it is now. The game was broken so deep in the code, so there's nothing that could have been done to fix most of these bugs besides from build the game up again from more or less the ground up and hope to not make the same errors. A result of them trying this is more than likely Syndicate. Beyond the bugs though, there was a good game hiding. Under all that muck, it was there, waiting to shine, and yeah, unfortunately the game was never properly polished. Beyond the bugs though, the story was somewhat interesting, that's what I would say. Arno is a good main character, he's not necessarily the best the franchise has seen, but he's most certainly not the worst either. The love story really held Arno's character back, and I feel as if had they approached Arno's story in a different way, or better performance on Elise's part, then Arno could have been much better liked. However, I get that love stories can be incredibly hard to execute in games. They might work on television shows or movies, but in a game in which all you really want to do deep down in your epic gamer soul is kill people, they consistently fail to shine. As I mentioned before, I did find some enjoyment from the Assassin's Creed Unity co-op, however that enjoyment was rather limited. For the most part, the co-op can be fairly boring, and considering that I play PC and the majority of my friends play console, it is quite hard to find friends to play Assassin's Creed Unity co-op with, so I didn't get the full extent of enjoyment that I perhaps could have got. All in all, Assassin's Creed Unity was a very flawed experience with plenty of potential that just didn't quite make it. On top of all of that, the hype for Unity was unhealthily large for any game, so there really is no surprise that I've ranked it how I have. Moving on, we have Assassin's Creed Rogue. A lot of people would call this game a poor man's Black Flag, and I can 100% get that. The game is very similar to Black Flag and nowhere near as good. But Assassin's Creed Rogue did do one thing no other game in the franchise has really done, and it did it somewhat well. It showed the Templars' perspective, and it's a pretty decent story to follow. Shade Effects from the Assassins becomes a Templar and starts doing assassin-esque work for the Templars. I rather enjoyed what we got. The story lasted about 6 hours and was ultimately a lot shorter than I would have liked, and outside of the story the open world was very mundane, hardly anything to do, that isn't a shallow side quest that almost feels randomised due to its low quality, or one of the hundreds if not thousands of pointless collectibles dotted around the open world. This stuff brought the game down massively, and ultimately it was very forgettable. It was so forgettable that most people spell its name wrong. But all Rogue was intended to do was to soften that switch from the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 to the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, so there were no expectations for this game, so it really didn't leave a sting. And for what it was, I rather enjoyed it. Moving on to our number 6 spot, we have got Assassin's Creed 1. Oh yes, the game that kicked it all off. The first Assassin's Creed game, it goes without saying that it's incredibly nostalgic to play. Even now, I absolutely love going back every now and then and playing it. It kicked the franchise off well, as seen by the fact that it was good enough to warrant a sequel and games afterwards. And for that, I'll always love Assassin's Creed 1. I love the episodic structure to hunting down individual targets through investigations, which gave off a small sense of mystery that I loved. However, Assassin's Creed 1's biggest issues were the fact that despite being such a good game, there are other games due to technology and such in the franchise that are just better, and the fact that the game did get very repetitive. All that being said, I'll always cherish Assassin's Creed 1 as the game that started all of this, so it'll always have a place in my heart. Moving on, we have got Assassin's Creed Revelations. Now, I've always seen the quality of the Ezio trilogy as a steady walk down a hill. Revelations was the weakest of the Ezio games for me, but by no means was it bad. Revelations had an incredible main storyline in which we finish off Ezio's story, which was executed beautifully. Beyond this incredible main story, Revelations had its fair share of jaw-dropping set pieces, and the game's soundtrack was utterly gorgeous. However, beyond all that, the thing that made Revelations the weakest of the Ezio trilogy was its open world. Now, Assassin's Creed at the time never had the most compelling of open worlds going, but Revelations' open world was almost immediately quite boring and lacking in variety. This brought the game down a fair bit for me, but all in all, Revelations was a damn good game. Moving into number 4, we have got Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Black Flag was an amazing game. It meshed Assassin's Creed with the pirate stuff in the best way possible, even if it doesn't feel as Assassin's Creed focused as it perhaps could have been anymore, and it might not have been so good. The game shows the progression of Edward Kenway from selfish pirate to wise assassin out to do the right thing as opposed to get rich. On top of this, the naval combat really made this game. I can get a lot of enjoyment from just firing up the game and plundering ships for the hell of it, or collecting resources if I need them. The game's open world does have a fair few pointless collectibles though. That is one thing that might be an issue, but it doesn't try to use them as a substitute for fun content nearly as much as Rogue did. There are side quest lines to follow in which Edward helps out various assassins in their missions across the Caribbean. These are quite fun for sure. The main issue with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag probably is that most of its land missions consisted of tailing, which is annoying the first time, let alone the 15th. Beyond this though, Black Flag is a really good game, so I definitely recommend this game to anybody who hasn't played it. In our number 3 spot, we've got Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. That rhymed and now I feel really weird. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was a really good game. It came straight after Assassin's Creed 2 and continued the story of Ezio, a character most fans at the time loved. The game shows Ezio mature into his role as a master assassin and mellow. I have no idea where that came from. As I was, the game shows Ezio mature into his role as master assassin and mentor as he builds up the Brotherhood in the city of Rome and rise up against the Borgia occupation. The story isn't too long and can be done in about 8 hours if you really put your back into it. Beyond this, there are side missions in which you can help people across Rome by assassinating certain people. There are also side missions in which you can destroy various inventions made by Leonardo da Vinci for Borgia. Beyond this, the Romulus tombs are also fun little set pieces that are worth doing. Then there's the recruit system, where you can recruit oppressed citizens across Rome into the Brotherhood. You can call on them to help you in battle, and you can send them on contracts across Europe. But if you're not careful, these assassins can die, and as a result, you'll have to find a new recruit and train them up as a replacement. And the more areas you liberate in Rome, the more recruits you can have. I really think this system handled quite well, and I really enjoyed it. All in all, I really liked Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. It was the perfect continuation to Ezio's story. In our number 2 spot, we have Assassin's Creed Origins, the latest entry to the franchise. A game that actually exceeded my expectations, to be fair, considering that this was after Unity and Syndicate. My expectations did have a bit of skepticism to them, so I was pleasantly surprised by Assassin's Creed Origins. This game is one hell of a comeback considering the game's taking a year off following the backlash from Unity and Syndicate. Origins reworked the base game entirely, focusing on improving the overall quality of the game, and as a result we got a beautiful open world filled with deep, compelling side quests, many locations filled with loot worthy of finding, side activities such as the arena or the hippodrome, a good main story to top it all off, and a really nice soundtrack. The game does stray quite far from what we know as Assassin's Creed, and I know it's a lot of people taking issue with that, but the way I see it, Assassin's Creed had to innovate or die, so to me, if anything, this is a good thing. Either way, Assassin's Creed Origins was a huge leap in the right direction for the franchise after the fatigue suffered from Unity and Syndicate, despite there still being flaws present such as the repetitive objective of carrying people out of restricted areas. The game is so close to the top spot on this list because I feel as if this
Married
is
to Jesse.
and a step in the right direction, and sort of like the beginning of a new era of Assassin's Creed games. I honestly really loved Assassin's Creed Origins, and I'm very excited to see Bayek's story continued in the DLCs. And of course, still atop the throne we have Assassin's Creed 2. Assassin's Creed Origins and Brotherhood might have come close, but Assassin's Creed 2 is still the best Assassin's Creed game in my opinion. Assassin's Creed 2's story was an incredible journey in which we see Ezio's story, from a young man, watching his family die, along his revenge path to the point where he becomes an assassin, and then a little bit beyond as well. There is plenty of character development and interesting side characters such as Leonardo da Vinci, Bartolomeo, Niccolo Machiavelli, and etc. The soundtrack is both fitting for the setting and the game itself. The open world, gameplay and graphics are fairly dated for modern standards, but beyond that the game was amazing, especially the first time around. The feels have become embedded in nostalgia, which has kept it at the top of my list even today. And unless an Assassin's Creed game does it all right in the future, it's likely to stay that way. So that is my updated ranking of the Assassin's Creed games from worst to best for 2018, which includes Assassin's Creed Origins and the 9 games that came before it. Obviously, I only included the AAA titles because comparing anything else to the AAA titles wouldn't be fair. Also, like I said at the beginning, this was all in my opinion, so please don't lynch me. Be sure to let me know about your list down in those comments. Thank you all for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will see you all very soon with another video at some point. Oh, I think Optimus Prime has just landed in the desert.
Gods, have they sent a message from the sky? It's as if Ra has descended upon us. This is a sign from the gods.
A large stone glowing blue that fell to earth from the sky. Well, it wasn't an Autobot. Paint me disappointed. Let's go in then, shall we?
This number seems important.
I think this is a Final Fantasy quest, you know. Resolve the sundial puzzle. How do I solve a puzzle? I'm confused. Mate. Why am I attacking him with a torch? What am I looking for? Solve the sundial's puzzle. Okay, well obviously I have to climb the obelisk. What is this? Just loads of holes. Maybe get Senu to do a thing. Yeah, this is definitely the Final Fantasy quest because there's the Easter eggs thing going on. I thought this was to do with the Trial of the Gods to start with. I'm a fucking retard. Let's jump off again because this is great fun. How do I solve this puzzle? Maybe it has something to do with this. You right there, lads? How goes it? Okay, I'm well and truly confused. Slide back in real quick. Right, okay, so there's the tower. Those are the ones that need to be lit up. Right, okay, so is this along the left-hand side of it all? Right, that makes sense. We'll go and sort that out. I have no clue. What am I supposed to do?
Doctor Who, in its current state, is a shadow of its former self. Since the departure of Russell T Davies from the show, the quality of the writing has steadily declined. In this video essay, I will not focus on trivial things such as casting choices or special effects, but rather exclusively the writing. Here is my hypothesis. In Davies' era, the quality of the writing was vastly superior to Moffat's. And once you see the evidence I have supporting this theory, it will be more obvious than ever that compared to Davies, Moffat has no clue what he is doing. I think the best place to start is the use of humour. I believe that there is room for humour in every story regardless of genre, and it is something Davies was exceptionally good at. In the first episode with Christopher Eccleston, there is a humorous scene that plays out like this.
I'm in my dressing gown.
Yes, you are.
There's a strange man in my bedroom
Yes, there is.
where anything could happen.
No.
Jackie comes on to the Doctor while he is in her bedroom with offers of sex. Every time she comes on to him, he gives a very polite passive response to try and indicate he is not interested, and after a while, he simply creates the least amount of confrontation possible, says no, and walks off. This is funny because it's a joke at Jackie's expense, but what does this tell us about Nine's character? That he is polite and well-mannered, doesn't like confrontation, is not easily tempted, and cares about strangers' feelings. This humanises him by revealing the qualities of his character help.
There's a certain narrative device that I see in just about every major Hollywood blockbuster, and it's often used, well, lazily. If you watched the recent Justice League movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Maybe you thought to yourself at some point during the film, really? They've got to get some magical cubes again? And while it's comical to look at the many similarities between Justice League and the Avengers, what's also true is that both the Mother Boxes and the Tesseract are examples of a much broader plot device called a MacGuffin.
Can you explain what a MacGuffin is?
Yes, a MacGuffin you see in most films about spies. It is the thing that the spies are after. It's always called the thing that the characters on the screen worry about, but the audience don't care.
Where is the ring? Where is the Codex, Cal?
Where's the trigger? Where is it? Where is it?
I can get it. I can almost reach it, Dad.
It's the thing that sets the plot in motion, an object that the heroes and villains can battle over. It's the sacred artifact, the superweapon, the money in the vault of every heist movie. You're most likely to encounter them in science fiction, fantasy, or spy movies, but there's a lot of potential pitfalls for storytellers when it comes to MacGuffins. The first is right up there in the description. The audience doesn't care about the MacGuffin itself, which we'll get to in a minute. The bigger problem is that while a MacGuffin is a really easy way to introduce conflict into a story, it's often very shallow conflict. The story can start with a bang if the characters are battling over possession of something valuable, but I find that the more emphasis put on that simple conflict, the duller the story. It's why Justice League is so forgettable. They spend 95% of the movie talking about some weird gray space cubes. It is possible to write superhero movies and fantasy sci-fi spy movies without this trope. But if you absolutely need to use a MacGuffin to kick off your movie, then here are 5 tactics that have made some of the most memorable MacGuffins so effective. Number 1. Try not to make it a weapon of mass destruction, maybe? Plenty of fine movies have been made off of the premise of stop the guy from getting the thing that ends the world. But if you're going to go there, you sort of write yourself into a box. Because now, the only way the movie can end is with the characters playing hot potato over the bomb. The MacGuffin overtakes the rest of the movie. See, a MacGuffin is useful when kicking off the conflict of a story, but it doesn't have to be ever present, or even all that important by the end. Take a look at some of the most famous examples of this device. The word Rosebud in Citizen Kane kicks off the story, but then the momentum of the characters takes over. The same is true of the Maltese Falcon, a statue that initiates a mystery and then a love story. By the end of the movie, we're much more focused on what will happen to Sam and Bridget than we are on who ends up with the statue. And in Pulp Fiction, the mysterious briefcase sort of floats through the story. The fact that we never see what's inside is itself a commentary on the emptiness of this narrative device, because what they're fighting over doesn't really matter. What matters is how the characters fight over it, and the decisions that they make. Number 2. Build mystery around the MacGuffin. Okay, so Harry Potter and Indiana Jones are very different characters, but they have very similar stories, don't they? And that's because both of them are absolutely riddled with MacGuffins like the Ark of the Covenant, the Philosopher's Stone, the Holy Grail, and the Horcruxes. But unlike the aforementioned mother boxes and other unsatisfying MacGuffins, the magical objects in Harry Potter and Indiana Jones are cloaked in mystery. They're usually not even on screen at all until the very end, so they never have time to get boring. The characters have to solve a dozen riddles and brave obstacles just to get to them, and their exact properties are often obscured until the very last second. This is one of the reasons I think many people didn't enjoy the fourth Indiana Jones movie, because any mystique the Crystal Skull might have had sort of evaporates once you start tossing it around like airport luggage. Number 3. Use an anti-MacGuffin. Okay, so I just made that word up, so let's define it. In an early episode of the best TV show you didn't watch, The Leftovers, protagonist Kevin Garvey is tasked with recovering a stolen baby Jesus doll for the school's nativity scene. So the doll is our MacGuffin. Or is it? If we define MacGuffins as something the audience doesn't care about but the characters do, then what differentiates the baby Jesus doll is that it is something the audience doesn't care about, and the characters don't either. Just about everyone involved in the recovery of the doll is doing it out of obligation, convinced that someone else will care if the doll is missing. Kevin finally agrees to get it, but then it just kind of shows up on his doorstep. When he announces that he will personally return it, the collective response from the people is, meh.
As soon as the dance is over, I am personally going to be delivering him back to the manger, so that's there's that.
And any religious meaning it may have held is robbed from it when it is replaced by a second doll. And at the end of the episode, it's ultimately tossed out into the side of the road, forgotten like the faith it represents in the world of that show. This sort of anti-MacGuffin is used to reflect the nihilistic worldview of the story, but in the process it provides an interesting framework to reinvent this particular story element. Make the characters resent having to search for the MacGuffin, and milk that internal conflict for all it's worth. Number 4. Make the MacGuffin a character we like. When making the original Star Wars movie, George Lucas disagreed with Hitchcock's original definition of a MacGuffin. He believed that the audience should care very deeply about this part of the story, and that's where R2-D2 comes in. Now, technically the actual MacGuffin here is the plan for the Death Star, but since the plans are essentially inseparable from our plucky droid, until the final act of the movie anyway, they might as well be one and the same. We might not be invested in who ends up with the plans when the movie begins, but we are almost immediately invested in the safety of R2-D2, and later BB-8. Cause the movie would be boring if it was just about the Death Star plans. And finally, number 5. Make the MacGuffin symbolic of the theme. Now, this should be the absolute bare minimum to ask from a MacGuffin. My favorite example of it is in the Lego movie. In that movie, the characters are fighting over the Kraggle, which we learn is actually a bottle of crazy glue. The villain wants to use it to glue all of the Lego in place, reflecting his ideology of conformity, while the heroes want to stop him because they believe in freedom of expression. Yes, even 3 years on, I'm still impressed these guys figured out a way to make the two major playstyles of Lego, following the instructions versus doing whatever, into the theme of a movie. Because every element of a story should, ideally, connect to the theme. Okay, a lazily conceived MacGuffin can drag down a story and make it feel generic. And I feel that's what happened in Justice League and in a lot of similar movies. Of course, when crafting a story, it's much more important to focus on characters. But, as we've seen in some of the examples listed here, an effective MacGuffin can bring the characters into focus and elevate the story. Or, challenge yourself to avoid using this device entirely.
Let it go.
This episode is sponsored by Verve, a cool new streaming service with an emphasis on anime like Attack on Titan. If you hit the link in the description of this video, you'll get a 30-day ad-free trial of Verve Premium, which will give you access to a bunch of channels like Crunchyroll, Funimation, Mondo, and more. So you basically get a ton of value for your subscription, and you can watch everything you like on the go without an internet connection as well. Of course, I recommend checking out Harmon Quest. I did a video on it a couple of months back, and if that doesn't convince you to check it
What
What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we're going to be discussing heroic strikes in Destiny 2. Now, these heroic strikes were recently reintroduced into the game with the Curse of Osiris expansion. And quite frankly, there's no other way to put this. Heroic strikes in Destiny 2, well, they suck. But here's the weird part. The strikes in and of themselves, the actual content, the foundation of heroic strikes are great. The actual levels as strikes are fun to play. They're different every time you play them due to randomly spawning enemies and sometimes different pathways you go. The boss fights are actually quite well done. Usually they're mechanics focused and they really keep you on your toes most of the time. They are a fun, engaging activity in Destiny 2, so why am I saying they suck? Well, like I said, the foundation of the strikes is solid, the strikes themselves. It's everything on top. It's the rest of the house that's rotten. Because heroic strikes are the most egregious and obvious example of downgrades made from Destiny 1 improvements going forward into Destiny 2. If you are someone who didn't play Destiny 1, is playing Destiny 2, and you're thinking, I don't know what the heck all of these Destiny 1 players are whining about, I think this is a great game, you must watch this video. If you have a friend out there who hasn't played Destiny 1 and they play Destiny 2, they must watch this video because, again, it's the most glaringly obvious example of massive improvements made in Destiny 1 that were thrown away for no reason whatsoever in Destiny 2. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why heroic strikes in Destiny 2 are so lacking. We're going to talk about the improvements Destiny 1 made and how to reintroduce those and improve Destiny 2 heroic strikes dramatically. Because if you're playing PvE, a huge part of the game is strikes. And so for this content to be lacking is a huge downgrade to the game in general. So let's talk about it. But first, you know what? I think we need a change in scenery. There we go. This is gameplay from the Destiny 1 heroic strikes. And this is an old gameplay. This is gameplay I got recently. The strikes are still up and running and they're still very fun to play. Let's talk about some of the improvements in the Destiny 1 strikes that Destiny 2 should absolutely introduce. Firstly, one of the things you're going to see right away is strike scoring. When you kill enemies, when you get multiple kills with your heavy, multiple kills with your, at that time it was your special and your primary weapon, and at the end of the strike, you're going to get a tier rating based on your score. You're going to get bronze, silver, or gold tier. And so this is a way to just go in, see how well you can do in a strike, see how many points you can get. Just the scoring system itself spices up strikes. But there's more on top of that. There's also bounties related to strike scoring. Certain bounties that will give you armor pieces from an exclusive armor set if you get a certain amount of gold tier strikes in the week or so on. So there's actual tangible rewards based on this scoring system. And the best part is that this entire strike scoring system and the bounty system based off the strike scoring system were all added in Destiny 1 during the Dawning. That's right, the Dawning, the first live event that Destiny 2 has right now. So this is what really inspired me to make this video, is that the Dawning in Destiny 1 redid strikes, added a bunch of content, rejuvenated the entire strike playlist for a very long time, and the Dawning in Destiny 2 did none of that stuff. Just added a ton of different items into Eververse, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and snowballs, which are sweet, but there's no challenges, there's no rewards, there's nothing based upon that. So, strike scoring and rewards based on that scoring system are two things that would hugely improve Destiny 2 strikes. But another improvement made to D1 strikes is strike exclusive loot. This is a big one. Added in the Taken King expansion, strike exclusive loot massively spiced up every single strike in the game. Before, there was kind of what was technically strike exclusive loot in the fact that there was loot that you could only get from the strike playlist. But strike exclusive loot in particular, what I'm referring to, again added in the Taken King, was loot based on each individual strike. You can fight the Darkblade. In fact, you'll see me fight the Darkblade in the background gameplay, and you can see this guy's crazy triangular head. Well, you can actually get, for the Titan, the Darkblade's helm, the actual helmet that is this strike boss's head. How sweet is that? And why is there nothing like that in Destiny 2? It was so fun going into Destiny 1 strikes and trying to get, well, the armor in and of itself. The fact that you could get so much different armor that actually resembled and was related to these strike bosses. Like the Warlock gauntlets I'm showing off now with these crazy waving tentacles. This armor piece is cooler than anything I've seen in Destiny 2, and it's just a strike exclusive loot piece. So having these awesomely designed armor pieces that were related to the strike you were doing was a huge motivating factor for people to play strikes and collect these armor sets. But it was more than just armor. There was also a ton of strike exclusive weapons. Take this Taken shotgun. This was acquired from a Taken strike. So you would go in, fight a Takenized boss, and you could drop this Taken shotgun. Guys, this shotgun wasn't even that good. It was not even a good shotgun, but people wanted it. Why? Because look at how cool it is. Just the design and just the fact that you're earning this weapon for a thematic reward for a strike was a huge motivating factor for people to play the strike playlist. But it was more than just this Taken shotgun. Nearly every strike in the game had a strike exclusive weapon. And although there was certain weapons that did spawn in multiple strikes, that happened a lot, there was very good weapons. The Imago Loop hand cannon was an incredibly powerful weapon. I remember grinding for my Baron's Ambition machine gun for hours and hours. Like, I spent way too much time, frankly, grinding for this weapon, but the Baron's Ambition was an incredibly powerful machine gun. Like, just absolutely tore through people in the Crucible, one of my favorite guns I ever got in Destiny 1, and it was so much more rewarding because you're getting it from that specific activity, it's related to the activity you're doing, and by the way, rip machine guns. So in Destiny 2, although we have Vanguard loot, and it's loot that you can only get from strikes, it's not truly strike exclusive loot. It doesn't have the depth, it doesn't have the, frankly, wow factor as the strike exclusive loot in Destiny 1 did have. Having these thematic rewards that were earned in individual strikes, it really spiced up the playlist and something that Destiny 2 desperately needs. However, these things pale in comparison to the biggest advantage that strikes have in terms of replayability, game diversity, and frankly just fun factor, and that is the modifiers. The modifiers in the Destiny 1 Heroic Strikes are amazing. They were a fantastic idea. Their addition completely changed how Heroic Strikes were played for the better, and it made Heroic Strikes an extremely fun activity to do. At the time I got this gameplay, we had a bunch of different modifiers. Two in particular, there was Arc Burn, so all arc weapons are doing bonus damage, and Specialist. So your special weapons are doing bonus damage too. So obviously you have an arc special weapon and it does amazing damage. You can absolutely shred enemies. So I put on the Found Verdict shotgun from the Vault of Glass. It's an amazing arc shotgun, like full auto, great stats, and I went to town. This thing was so fun to use, just murking people with this classic shotgun. A ton of fun. I used the Fatebringer, also from the Vault of Glass, just the normal kinetic version, and then I was, again, missing machine guns, so I used the Thunderlord Exotic, an arc machine gun. And it was a blast. But here's the thing. What would it look like if the next week, because these modifiers rotate every single week, so let's say the next week, instead of Arc Burn, it was Solar Burn. Well, because weapons in Destiny 1 can't change their element, my loadout would change completely. I'd be using the Sunbreaker Titan, I'd be using the Burning Eye Adept Scout Rifle with explosive rounds, incredible weapon. I'd use my Godroll Arene RR4 Snipe Rifle, it's got extended mags and triple tap. By the way, triple tap in D1 just generates the ammo out of thin air, it's fantastic. And if it's Solar Burn, I'm going to use the absolute god gun of Destiny, the Gjallarhorn. I gotta. And to back up the Gjallarhorn, I'm going to be using the Ruin Wings Exotic, which is going to let me get more heavy ammo. So that just means more Gjallarhorn shots. That's an example of how my loadout would completely change week to week. Now let's go over another example. What if it was Void Burn? Well, I'd be using the Defender Titan, my Void subclass. Then I'd be using the exotic primary weapon, the Steel Medulla Pulse Rifle, to have consistent void damage. Then, for shotguns, I gotta bring out the absolute heaviest hitter in the game, the Matador 64. Yep, almost god rolled. Then, to wrap everything off, we've got yet another machine gun. My machine gun fever is growing, guys. It's the Vault of Glass machine gun, the Corrective Measure. This thing's an absolute beast. It automatically comes with surplus. You get more heavy ammo more of the time. For my exotic armor piece, I'm using the Armamentarium, so I get double void magnetic grenades, because the Defender Titan doesn't have the greatest output. As a subclass, having double grenades is super useful. So there you have it. 3 examples of 3 completely different class setups, and those class setups, they pretty much have to change. From week to week to week, as the modifiers rotate, you cannot use void weapons in a solar burn heroic strike playlist, because if you do, your weapons are not going to be doing very much damage, and the enemies are going to be melting you. Enemies that shoot solar do so much more damage to you as well, so your loadout is going to have to change every single week. Here's another crazy example. What if there was no burns, and what if the only beneficial perk was Brawler that increased your melee damage? Well, I'd be using the Striker Titan with the Monte Carlo Exotic Auto Rifle that increases my melee recharge rate as I shoot enemies and can instantly charge it as I kill enemies. You get your melee so much with this gun. Then I'm gonna use the Thagomizers. That gives me an extra melee charge and grants Amplify from my subclass node. So I'm going to be running around getting my melee so much, punching people non-stop, it's going to be a blast to use. So four completely different classes depending on the modifiers. In Destiny 2, because there's no modifiers, there is no reason to change your loadout week to week to week. No matter which week it is, you're always using the same loadout, with the only exception being you changing your loadout just because it's getting boring, or you're changing stuff for specific strikes. But aside from that, there's nothing even close to the ability of modifiers to shake everyone's loadouts up from week to week to week. Having no modifiers in Destiny 2 makes the gameplay variation goes from what I've just demonstrated in Destiny 1 with 4 completely distinct loadouts depending on the modifiers, to nothing, to literally zero, no motivating factor to change your loadout whatsoever. You just find your optimized loadout with your Masterworks Better Devils, then let's say a Masterworks Uriel's Gift, and then let's say the Wardcliff Coil or the Sins of the Past or whatever, and you use that same build every single damn time you play strikes. It doesn't make any sense. Modifiers for heroic strikes absolutely need to be brought back into Destiny 2, and the modifiers themselves need to improve. Prism is a cool modifier, but because you're having these rotating burns, and because you can change the burns on your legendary weapons, there's really no reason to change your loadout. Bungie needs to bring back these straight up Arc Burn, Void Burn, Solar Burns from Destiny 1. Now, with all of that being said, the crazy part here at the tail end of the video is that we've gone through these massive improvements that Destiny 2 could do, and it's really just copying what Destiny 1 did. Like, Destiny 1 went through a 3-year lifespan figuring out these improvements, making mistakes, and making improvements, and eventually having a finished product just before Destiny 2 shipped. And then it was absolutely baffling when the Destiny 2 heroic strikes contained none of these changes. But again, we're just talking about what has already been done. That's the saddest part. Not only should these improvements have been added in the first place, but they should be improved upon. For example, strike exclusive loot should be even more in-depth and numerous than it was in Destiny 1. Strike scoring should be even more improved than it was in Destiny 1. Not lacking altogether. This is absolutely insane, and that's why I said at the beginning of the video, this is the example of all examples of what the Destiny 1 fans, what I'm going on about how Destiny 2 has regressed backwards and actually forsaken improvements, and I do not understand why. Hopefully Bungie can not only implement the improvements they already made in Destiny 1, but improve upon those improvements to get an even better version in Destiny 2. A sequel shouldn't have worse aspects, it should have better aspects. And guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. Now, if you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day. What is up, guys? RickCacus here, and today we have some pretty exciting Destiny 2 news, and that's because we apparently have a brand new leak for the next upcoming DLC for Destiny 2, the Warmind DLC. Now, I always gotta go over where the heck is this leak coming from, because that really determines its legitimacy. Well, if this is to be believed, it's about as legitimate as you can get. Apparently, the Japanese PlayStation Store, during an update, showcased information for this new DLC, went over the actual name of this DLC, as well as bullet points about what this DLC would contain. Basically, exactly what you were seeing for Curse of Osiris when Curse of Osiris was actually being announced. Just the bullet points of the content to try to get people more interested in buying this expansion via the PlayStation Store. Again, it was on the Japanese store, it went up for a little bit, multiple people got screenshots, and then it went down. It was deleted. Of course, if this actually did happen, that all makes sense. It would go up by accident, someone pressed a button they weren't supposed to. This stuff has happened in the past, where sites, especially foreign websites, will accidentally list upcoming products way too early. So this does again happen. But if it was to happen, it would also be deleted pretty quickly once Destiny got wind of this. There is another possibility that this screenshot that you're seeing from the PlayStation Store is just completely photoshopped. Like someone completely made this up. That's a possibility for everything these days. So that's where the information is coming from. If it's actually from the PlayStation Store, it's 100% legit. If it's a Photoshop, who knows? So I want to get that out there so you guys have that in mind. So of course, a lot of you guys may not speak Japanese, so let's do the translation. And again, the translation, boy, it reveals a ton. Now, just before we get into the information, it must be noted that not too long ago, there was another apparent leak for this DLC. This one was a little bit shadier information. A lot of people were quick to call it fake, but there does seem to be some similarities between this leak that just happened and the previous leak that was gotten from, or claimed to be gotten from, data miners of the game. And that does coincide for the data miners finding this information of early titles and kind of early concepts within the game's files, and then the finished and updated files are the ones actually being shown on the PlayStation Store. So again, I want to mention that. So what the heck is happening with DLC number 2? Well, apparently it's actually going to be called Gods of Mars. That's right, Mars. And that's also going to be where this DLC takes place. Now, I know right now a lot of you guys got a red flag. Mars? What the heck are you talking about? Because right now we do have this promotional image for DLC 2. We see a female character standing above a Warmind, like normal Warmind diamond shape. That all makes sense. And then it's an icy background. That part is for sure. So those are the three things we know for sure about this expansion. And Mars is not icy, right? Well, it actually is. You see, Mars has ice caps, and although the part of Mars that we went to in Destiny 1 was all desert, it's certainly not out of the question that a different part of Mars near the ice caps would actually be the frozen wasteland we see in this promotional image. So that is certainly actually not something that doesn't line up. It actually does line up. In addition, we also got a more accurate release date. All we knew so far was from an Activision earnings call that said spring 2018. But apparently, this expansion releases in May 2018, as much more of a specific timeline. This does make sense. In fact, that is when the House of Wolves expansion came out for Destiny 1. And the initial release date of Destiny 1 and the first expansion with the Dark Below coincide almost exactly with the release date of Destiny 2 and the first expansion of Curse of Osiris. Moving on from there, the description of this DLC reads, Destiny 2 Expansion 2, Gods of Mars, sends your Guardian out to Mars Clovis Grove, a brand new destination that is host to an array of brand new missions and adventures. Work alongside the elusive Anna Bray in order to prevent Charlemagne, Matrix of Corruption, from amassing an army of SIVA-enhanced weaponized frames before Mars is lost. So, from that little description, we see a lot of interesting things. Firstly, again, we're going to Mars, we're going to the Clovis Grove. That does line up with the icy wasteland for, again, going to Mars's ice caps. We also see a name, Anna Bray. Now, Anna Bray is a famous gunslinger within the lore, and her family, the Bray family, is, according to the lore, involved with SIVA, or was involved with SIVA. So that's all connecting, that's all adding up. Now, in the previous leak, it was claimed that there would be two new enemy factions, the Frames and the Heralds. Now, in that video, I did misspeak, and I said that the Frames and the Heralds didn't really have a connection in the lore. That's actually not true. The Frames, as these weird constructs that were involved with SIVA, are brought up several times within the lore, so thank you to those people who corrected me in the comment section. So the Frames do exist within the lore. They are an enemy faction that could be expanded upon and could be added into the game potentially with an expansion. So that's not out of the question, and the fact that we do see both of these leaks claiming somewhat of the same thing is very interesting, is that the Frames are going to be one of two new enemy factions coming in this expansion. We also do see Charlemagne brought up. Now, if you were in Destiny 1, I'm sure you were familiar with the one main warframe being Rasputin. He was the warframe on Earth. However, Charlemagne, located on Mars, is indeed another Warmind, according to the lore. So we've already dealt with Rasputin so much, we know there are more than one Warmind, so finally dealing with another Warmind in Charlemagne, and Charlemagne on Mars, that was brought up, that was actually, I believe there's a mission you could do on Mars in Destiny 1 that dealt with Charlemagne as a Warmind on Mars, so there was definitely some hints to that Warmind location, and being expanded upon in this expansion makes complete sense and does go with the whole Warmind theme that we are seeing. Now, Charlemagne going bad, Charlemagne Matrix of Corruption, that very much indicates that he is corrupted by SIVA and he is going to try to destroy, well, probably the universe. That seems to be SIVA's goal. And of course, in case you're wondering, I brought this up last leak video, but SIVA seems to be an underlying theme that's coming up in these leaks. SIVA does have a place in Destiny 2, although it was kind of destroyed or dealt with in Destiny 1 with the final expansion, The Rise of Iron. SIVA as a whole seems to be still kicking. Even on Nessus, the crashed ship is Exodus Black, which was reported to be holding SIVA. So it does have the possibility to gain a foothold in the Destiny 2 universe and become a problem again. So that's definitely not out of the question. Now, moving on from there, what actual content do the bullet points of this expansion claim is coming? Well, the first bullet point says, explore Mars's Clovis Grove and uncover Charlemagne's vault underneath the frozen wastes. Number 2, the next bullet point reads, new story missions and adventures, of course. Bullet point number 3 reads, new themed weapons, armor, and gear to uncover. Of course, that's 100% going to be in there. Number 4, new cooperative activities. So that's interesting. What is that new cooperative activity? I don't know. I believe this was also stated within the Curse of Osiris expansion, and I think those new cooperative activities were referring to, of course, the adventures and the heroic adventures that you could do, and new strikes and stuff like that. They're trying to be really broad, so I wouldn't say that that bullet point means something completely new, like a Prison of Elders type activity. I certainly hope it's the case, but we've seen that bullet point before, and it didn't really mean what a lot of people unfortunately think it does mean. It didn't really mean the best case scenario, is what I'm saying. I hope it does, but just want to clarify. The next bullet point after that, new competitive multiplayer arenas, totally makes sense. And the next bullet point is where things get really interesting. It says, new frame and nanite enemy faction. And yes, it does say faction and not factions plural. Now this could just be a mistake or a loss in translation type of thing, or the frame and nanite is one enemy faction, with the nanites being these Siva builders essentially that go and would help build the frames as the constructs that actually go and attack you, and the nanites being more similar to the nanite swarms we sometimes saw in the Destiny 1 expansion with Rise of Iron. That would be really cool. Again, it could be plural and this could be a mistake, and we have two new enemy factions, which quite frankly would be even better. So either scenario of a new faction or two new factions, both are great. So this is really interesting, and this does coincide with the first data mine leak, except it was the frames and the heralds. The heralds being changed to the nanites is something that totally makes sense as this expansion gets developed, as it goes through making the actual expansion. They tend to change things like the names, like the actual design of the enemies a little bit along the way. So putting it into the game as a base level as the heralds, and then later on changing it to the frames, is something that totally makes sense along the course of development. So this is really interesting that these two leaks very much coincide. And moving on from there, we have some pretty boring legal stuff, online features required, stuff like that. It does say 68 gigabytes minimum save size online play required. That sounds absolutely ridiculous, and it's totally ridiculous, but if you'll remember, it was equally ridiculous for the Curse of Osiris. It was like 88 gigs required for the Curse of Osiris, even though the DLC, the actual expansion, was nowhere near that number, and that was the official sizes given out by Bungie. So as a ridiculously big size, I would initially see that and say this leak isn't legit, but considering how big of a size the minimum save requirement was for the Curse of Osiris, I would say this actually coincides perfectly with what we've seen before. Now after that, it's just software subject to license agreements and stuff like that. So, this whole leak, a lot of interesting stuff given out. Being on Mars is really, really interesting. In fact, I have seen a Reddit post a while back, and it was not a leak, it was just someone speculating and saying, I think this expansion is going to be on Mars. Given the actual geometry and the geography of what we're seeing in this promotional picture for Expansion 2, that geography has been seen already on Mars. It just makes sense as an icy Mars, and Mars does have ice caps. And again, this was just someone speculating, but it made a lot of sense. And so seeing this leak coinciding with that and kind of going off some of the things we've already seen before, I think is really cool. And Anna Bray being mentioned again, as well as the two same enemy factions, or I should say a similar or renamed enemy factions being mentioned in both leaks, is another really interesting turn of events. So at the end of the day, is this leak legitimate? I have no idea, but I enjoy covering it, I enjoy making these videos, I enjoy speculating because it's fun, so why not? And I'm sure you guys would want to know about this information rather than me make the judgment call for you and keep you guys in the dark. But let's assume this is legitimate. Let's assume everything in this leak is 100% going to happen. What does this mean for Destiny 2? Well, first and foremost, the actual location of this Clovis Grove, and it does say you can go into Charlemagne's vault. Uncover Charlemagne's vault underneath the frozen wastes. I hope this means multiple public spaces. I think the Curse of Osiris got hugely criticized, and rightfully so, for only having one small public space on Mercury. A lot of people were expecting, at least a Titan area where there's two public event spaces where different things are occurring, different things are taking place, but more so like an IO, and the best case scenario like another EDZ. We have a big area to go and explore and do public events and have lost sectors and so on. And so having a public space as small as Mercury is definitely not the way to go. So hopefully they can improve upon this, and if there's 2 public spaces, one in Charlemagne's Vault and another in the Clovis Grove. That's a very, very good thing. That's a really good thing, and it's a huge improvement over the Curse of Osiris. Additionally, if there really is 1 or 2 new enemy factions, that's huge. All of the enemy factions in Destiny and Destiny 2 are very well designed. They feel very different when you fight the Fallen as it does to the Taken, as it does to the Cabal, as it does to the Hive. The enemies have different attacks, they behave differently, and it really spices up the fight going from fighting these enemy factions. So 2 completely new ones is a very big deal. Hope they are as well flushed out as the current factions in the game. So the frames would have a bunch of different units, just like you find a bunch of different units within the Cabal. You have bigger, more powerful units, and you have the grunt units, and you have the ranged units, and you have the unique units, and all of this stuff. Hopefully both of these enemy factions are as flushed out. And, like I said in the previous video, it would be very advantageous to the game to be able to, in some way, retroactively add these new factions. Like, make these new factions available to encounter